Hey guys, tonight we're going to pull back the curtain on history. But be warned, we're not visiting the grand palaces or the glorious battlefields. We're going somewhere much quieter and in many ways, much more unsettling. Imagine for a moment the feeling of a scratchy throat, a dull ache behind your eyes, the first inkling of a fever. Now, imagine that your best hope for a cure lies in a theory involving four bodily fluids, the alignment of the planets, and possibly a leech. The truth is, with our modern sensibilities and quaint expectation of not being permanently maimed by a splinter, most of us probably wouldn't last a week. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. I'd also love to know where you're tuning in from tonight and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see this community assembling from every corner of the globe. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You float up from the depths of a restless sleep. There is no gentle awakening, no soft morning light filtering through a clean window. Instead, you are dragged to consciousness by a dull, throbbing ache that seems to live behind your eyes. Your throat is a desert, dry and raw, and a strange, unwelcome heat radiates from your skin. It's a damp, sticky warmth that has nothing to do with the cool morning air inside your small, one-room dwelling. You are, against all odds, alive, but you are not well. You lie perfectly still on your straw-stuffed mattress, taking inventory. Every joint complains as you shift your weight. A wave of dizziness washes over you, and the rough-hewn timbers of the ceiling seem to swim for a moment before settling back into place. This feeling, this imbalance, it's familiar, not just to you, but to every person who has ever lived and breathed in this world. This is the feeling of your internal harmony being disrupted. In your time, there is no concept of germs, no understanding of viruses or bacteria. There are no microscopic invaders to blame. The culprit, as any learned man or village healer would tell you, is far more elemental. The problem lies with your humors. For your entire life, you have understood the body to be a small reflection of the greater universe, a microcosm governed by the same principles as the seasons and the stars. The world is made of four elements: earth, water, air, and fire. Each has its qualities: cold, wet, hot, and dry. And within your own body, these elements are mirrored by four vital fluids, the four humors. They are the very essence of your being. There is blood, which is hot and moist, like the air in springtime. When it's in perfect balance, it makes you cheerful, optimistic, and sociable, what the physicians call a sanguine temperament. Then there is phlegm, which is cold and moist, like water. It makes you calm, peaceful, and perhaps a little sluggish, a phlegmatic soul. Next comes yellow bile, hot and dry like the fire of summer. It fuels your ambition and your anger, giving you a choleric, fiery personality. And finally, there is black bile, cold and dry like the earth in winter. It makes you thoughtful, serious, and prone to sadness, a melancholic disposition. Your health, your personality, your very life depends on these four fluids remaining in perfect, delicate equilibrium. Every food you eat, every change in the weather, every strong emotion can affect their balance. A diet of hot peppers might increase your yellow bile, making you irritable. A long, damp winter might increase your phlegm, making you lethargic. Health is not the absence of disease, it is the presence of perfect harmony. And right now, lying on your lumpy bed with a fire raging under your skin, you know your harmony is gone. This heat you feel is a clear sign you have an excess of a hot humor. Your body's internal furnace is burning too brightly. Is it an overabundance of blood, perhaps from eating too much rich red meat last week? Or is it a surplus of yellow bile, churned up by that argument you had with your neighbor? A physician, were you able to afford one, would make his diagnosis by examining everything about you. He would study the color of your face, the smell of your breath, the texture of your skin. Some of the most meticulous doctors are said to even taste a patient's sweat or earwax, searching for clues. A salty tang might indicate one imbalance, a bitter note another. You, however, must be your own physician for now. You press your fingers to your forehead. It's slick with sweat, and the heat is undeniable. You are too hot and likely too moist. That points to blood, an excess of blood. The diagnosis feels right, a solid piece of logic in a world of uncertainty. This is the foundational medical fact of your existence, as solid to you as the dirt floor beneath your bed. Historians still argue whether the average person truly understood the intricate charts connecting the humors to zodiac signs and planetary alignments, or if they simply operated on this more fundamental level: hot, cold, wet, dry. For you, the complex astrology is the domain of scholars. Your reality is simpler. You know that if you have too much of something hot and wet, the cure must involve something cold and dry. The thought is exhausting. The cure will have to wait. The fever, this internal fire, is making you desperately thirsty. Your throat feels like it's coated in dust. You need a drink. You need to quench the fire, to bring some cooling moisture back into your system. Pushing yourself up on one elbow, the room tilting precariously, you swing your legs over the side of the bed. The cool, damp earth on the soles of your feet is a momentary relief. Your first challenge of the day is clear. Find something safe to drink. And as you already know, that is a far more dangerous proposition than it sounds.
The thirst is a physical presence now, a demanding, rasping thing at the back of your throat. It's a fire that needs dousing, a direct consequence of the excess heat you diagnosed in yourself just moments ago. Logic, the very foundation of your medical understanding, dictates that you need something cool and wet to counteract this hot and moist imbalance. Your body craves it. Stumbling out of the single-room hut, you squint against the morning light. The air is cool, but your skin remains stubbornly hot and clammy. Your goal is the stream, the one that winds its way just behind your small cluster of dwellings. From a distance, it looks picturesque. The water bubbles and gurgles over smooth gray stones, catching the sunlight in 1,000 glittering points. It's clear and seems to promise a pure, crisp refreshment, like something from a poet's verse about woodland nymphs. But you are no poet, and you know the truth. You know that this inviting ribbon of water is, in all likelihood, a beautifully disguised death trap. Your life experience has taught you a brutal lesson that your descendants will need microscopes to understand. Picturesque does not mean pure. You know that just a few hundred yards upstream, past the bend, your neighbor Agnes will soon dump her family's chamber pot, just as she does every morning. You know that the local tanner, whose workshop sits right on the riverbank for convenience, has been soaking animal hides in that same water, releasing a foul cocktail of dung, fat, and chemicals into the current. And upstream from him, the village fuller likely stomps on woolen cloth in a tub of stale urine, the runoff trickling back into the very water source you're staring at. That's not even considering the unseen contributions, the dead rat decaying in the reeds, the farm animal that relieved itself at the water's edge, the general seepage from the village's refuse pits. To drink from this stream is to gamble your life. One desperate, thirsty gulp could introduce a host of invisible evils into your system, turning your insides into a churning cauldron of misery. You've seen it happen. You've seen strong men and women laid low by a sudden bout of dysentery, the bloody flux that drains the very life from a person until they are nothing but a dry husk. In your world, without the miracle of intravenous fluids or antibiotics, simple dehydration is one of the most common and undignified ways to die. The sparkling water is a lie. And so, with a dry sigh, you turn your back on the stream. You retreat into the familiar gloom of your home, your eyes adjusting as you make your way to the corner where a squat wooden barrel sits. This is the true source of hydration. This is your family's supply of small beer. Now, before your mind conjures images of a raucous tavern, you must understand this is not the strong, rich ale saved for festivals and celebrations. This is a weak, watery brew with an alcohol content so low it barely registers. It's thin, a bit cloudy, and carries the faint sour tang of fermentation. Children drink it. You drink it for breakfast. It is, for all intents and purposes, your water. Its miraculous, life-saving quality comes not from the alcohol, but from the brewing process itself. In order to make beer, even small beer, the water must be boiled for a significant period. This simple act of heating, performed out of necessity for the brew, kills off the vast majority of the dangerous, unseen things lurking in the river water. It is a public health measure disguised as a beverage. For the wealthy, wine serves the same purpose, its fermentation process, a similar guard against contamination. But for you, this humble, watery ale is the Gatorade of your era. Historians still debate the true nutritional value and hydrating properties of this brew, but on one point they all agree. It was infinitely safer than what was flowing in the river. You dip a worn wooden ladle into the barrel, the liquid sloshing softly in the quiet hut. You pour the brownish, slightly frothy liquid into a simple clay cup. It's cool to the touch. You raise it to your lips and drink deeply. The taste is not refreshing in a modern sense. It's slightly malty, a little sour, and far from crisp. But it is wet, and it is cool. You can feel it sliding down your raw throat, a welcome balm against the fever's heat. It's a temporary truce, a moment of relief. The coolness of the drink feels like it's pushing back against the fiery excess of blood that plagues you. You've successfully administered your first dose of treatment, a cooling liquid to soothe a hot ailment. You finish the cup and stand for a moment, letting the dizziness subside. The thirst is quieted, but the deeper illness remains. The dull ache is still there, your limbs still feel heavy and unresponsive. Your body has been hydrated, but now it needs fuel. A gnawing emptiness in your stomach reminds you of the next challenge. You need to eat. And as you contemplate the dark, heavy loaf of bread sitting on the table, you know that, like the water, your daily meal is yet another gamble.
The cool relief of the small beer you drank moments ago has settled in your stomach, but it has done little to quell the underlying revolt happening within your body. The fever still hums under your skin, a low-grade fire that the watery ale could not extinguish. Now a new sensation joins the chorus of discomfort, a deep, hollow ache of hunger. Your body, weakened and at war with itself, is demanding fuel. Your gaze falls upon the centerpiece of every meal you have ever eaten, the bread. It sits on the rough-hewn wooden table, a dense, dark brown, circular loaf. This isn't the light, airy bread of a king's table. This is the very substance of your life, the cornerstone of your diet. It's heavy, coarse, and when you pick it up, it feels substantial in your hands. You use a small, worn knife to saw off a thick slice. The crumb is tight and moist, the crust hard enough to scrape your gums. It smells faintly sour, the ever-present aroma of rye. You are grateful for it. Food is scarce, a constant source of worry, and this loaf represents survival for another day. But as with the sparkling water from the stream, you know that even this most basic element of life can harbor its own dark secrets. In a world without preservatives or plastic wrap, the battle against decay is constant. But the dangers go beyond simple mold. In lean years, when the harvest is poor and the grain bins are running low, this bread might be less than it appears. It's a common, if desperate, practice to bulk up the flour with other things to make it last longer. Sometimes it's as harmless as ground peas or beans. Other times it's a matter of pure deception, with bakers adding a bit of clay or chalk to make a loaf feel heavier, or even sawdust and dried bark to add substance where there is none. You tear a piece from your slice, chewing it slowly. It's gritty, but that's not unusual. You can only hope the grit is from the millstone and not something added to cheat you. But there is a far more terrifying danger than sawdust, one that appears only in certain years after a particularly damp growing season. It's a creeping, purplish-black fungus that grows on the heads of rye, a growth called ergot.
To the desperate or unobservant farmer, these dark kernels might be harvested and ground right along with the healthy grain, unknowingly mixing a lethal poison into the community's flour supply. And when that tainted flour is baked into bread, like the loaf sitting in front of you, it can unleash a horrific condition known in your time as St. Anthony's fire. It is a disease of two devastating varieties. The first is gangrenous. It begins with a searing, unbearable pain in your limbs, a sensation that feels exactly like you are being consumed by an invisible fire from the inside out. This agony is followed by a creeping numbness. Your fingers, your toes, your hands, and your feet grow cold. They slowly turn black, becoming dry and mummified while still attached to your body. Then, often without any pain at all, they simply fall off. The second form is convulsive. This poison attacks your mind as much as your body. It brings on violent, writhing muscle spasms that can contort your body into agonizing positions. It fills your head with vivid, terrifying hallucinations, nightmares that bleed into your waking hours until you can no longer tell the difference. Entire villages have sometimes been afflicted at once. Some historians now theorize that many of the bizarre dancing plagues recorded in the chronicles, where whole towns of people appeared to dance manically and without reason in the streets until they collapsed from sheer exhaustion, were not bouts of collective madness, but mass poisonings, an entire community convulsing from the ergot in their daily bread. Every time you take a bite, you are rolling a set of invisible dice. You are gambling that the harvest was dry, that the miller was careful, that your meal isn't laced with a poison that could make your limbs drop off or turn your world into a waking nightmare. You look at the half-eaten slice of bread in your hand. The hunger gnaws at you, a more immediate and certain threat than any fungus. You have to eat. Calories are calories, and your body needs strength to fight this fever. You finish the slice, the coarse rye scratching your raw throat on its way down. It sits like a stone in your stomach. The food provides no comfort, no surge of returning vitality. In fact, the dull ache behind your eyes seems to have sharpened slightly. The heat under your skin has not subsided. The water didn't help, and now the food hasn't helped. The imbalance inside you is worsening, and it's becoming clear that your own simple remedies are not enough. This sickness is beyond your understanding. You need help. You need someone who can do more than just guess, someone who can intervene directly. And in your world, that means you need to visit a man with sharp tools and a strong stomach. You need a barber surgeon.
The rye bread sits like a stone in your churning stomach, offering no strength, only a heavy sinking feeling that drags your spirit down with it. The fever, your unwelcome companion since waking, seems to mock your attempts to soothe it. The watery ale and the coarse bread have failed. Your self-diagnosis of an excess of blood, that hot, wet humor running rampant through your veins, now feels more certain than ever. Simple remedies are not enough. You need someone to physically remove the sickness from you. With a groan, you pull yourself to your feet and step out into the day once more. The world feels slightly tilted. The sounds of the village, a distant hammer on an anvil, the squawking of chickens, the cry of a merchant selling his wares, all seem muffled and far away. You know where you have to go. You trudge down the muddy, rutted track that serves as a main street, your destination marked by a symbol that is both commonplace and vaguely menacing, a wooden pole painted with a twisting red and white stripe. This is the sign of the barber surgeon. To you, it's as clear an advertisement as any written word. The white represents the clean linen bandages of his trade, and the red, well, the red represents the blood, because in your world, the man who cuts your hair is also the man who cuts your flesh. Shaving, tooth-pulling, setting a broken bone, lancing a boil, and the most common medical procedure of all, bloodletting, it all falls under the purview of this one indispensable craftsman. He is not a learned man of books and theories, but a man of the hands, a practitioner of the physical arts. You push open the heavy wooden door. The air inside is thick with a strange mixture of scents: the soap used for shaving, the metallic tang of blood, and the smoky residue from herbs being burned to clear the bad air. The shop is a single room, bisected by its purpose. On one side sits a simple chair and the tools of a barber: shears, razors, a leather strop. On the other is the reason you are here. A sturdier, lower bench sits beside a small table laid out with an intimidating array of polished steel tools: hooks, saws, forceps, and lancets of varying sizes. Below the table are several metal bowls and a large glass jar in which several dark, slug-like shapes writhe slowly. Leeches. The barber surgeon turns from sharpening a razor. He is a stout man with powerful forearms, his leather apron stained with the evidence of his varied work. He wastes no time on pleasantries. You describe your ailment: the heat, the sweat, the ache behind your eyes, the feeling of being too full, too vibrant in a sickly way. He nods slowly, his face a mask of professional seriousness. He listens, perhaps places a hand on your forehead to confirm the heat. His diagnosis is swift, confirming your own: a sanguine plethora, an overabundance of blood. The body's furnace is stoked too high, and the only logical solution is to open a vent and let some of the excess heat escape. He gestures you to the bench. There is no question of refusing. This is the cure. He takes your arm, his grip firm and confident, and tightly ties a strip of clean linen around your bicep. You watch as the veins on the inside of your elbow darken and swell, becoming prominent under your skin. He selects his tool, not a leech today, but a lancet, a small pointed blade with a wickedly sharp edge that glints in the dim light. He murmurs something about finding a good vein, his voice calm and practiced. You turn your head away and brace yourself. You feel a sharp, stinging prick, no worse than a wasp sting, and then a sudden warmth as your own life force begins to flow out of you. You risk a glance back. Your dark, rich blood runs down your arm, a startlingly vibrant red against your pale skin, trickling into the shallow metal bowl he holds beneath it. The barber surgeon watches the flow with a critical eye, like a cook watching a simmering pot. The goal is to remove just enough to restore balance. Too little, and the fever will remain. Too much, and you could faint or worse. Often, the sign that the treatment is complete is when the patient begins to feel dizzy and lightheaded, a state believed to indicate the humors are successfully rebalancing. Modern scholars debate whether this procedure offered any real benefit. While scientifically baseless, some suggest the powerful placebo effect of such a dramatic intervention, or in rare cases of high blood pressure, the blood loss might have coincidentally provided a moment of temporary relief, reinforcing the belief in its efficacy for generations. To you, though, this is no debate. This is medicine. As the bowl fills, you do begin to feel a strange sense of calm descending. The world softens at the edges. The barber surgeon seems satisfied, expertly removing the lancet and pressing a pad of folded linen to the small wound before binding your arm tightly. The flow stops. He shows you the bowl, the captured heat, the very essence of your sickness now sitting outside your body. You feel weak, drained, but also strangely hopeful. You have faced the illness head-on and had it physically removed from you. You pay the man not with coin, but with a few eggs you brought for this very purpose. He accepts them with a nod and turns to his next customer, a man wanting a simple shave. You stumble back out into the street, the world seeming brighter, louder, and much less stable than before. The lightheadedness from the blood loss mingles with the fever's dizziness. You have been treated, yes, but as you make your slow, unsteady way back to your straw bed, a sliver of doubt enters your mind. Have you truly been cured? Or have you just been weakened, made more vulnerable for whatever comes next?
The weakness from the barber-surgeon's lancet lingers for days. You spend most of your time lying on your straw mattress, the world a hazy, indistinct blur. The bloodletting, which promised to be the definitive cure, has done nothing to quell the fire in your veins. If anything, the fever now has a weaker opponent to contend with. The brief flicker of hope you felt has been extinguished, replaced by a deep, weary sense of dread. Your family watches you, their faces etched with a growing fear. The practical, hands-on approach has failed. It is time for a different kind of medicine. It is time to consult a man of learning, a true physician. This is not a simple decision. A barber-surgeon is a tradesman, paid for with a chicken or a handful of produce. A physician is a scholar, a man of status and immense expense. Consulting him requires pooling your family's meager savings, the few coins hidden away for a true catastrophe. This, it seems, is that catastrophe. A message is sent, and a day later, he arrives. His presence immediately changes the atmosphere in your small hut. Unlike the stout, apron-clad barber-surgeon, the physician is a man who seems entirely separate from the grime and toil of your world. He is dressed in a dark, fur-lined robe, despite the mildness of the day. His hands are clean, his beard neatly trimmed. He carries with him an air of intellectual authority and a faint scent of clothes. He does not approach your bedside. Instead, he stands near the center of the room, observing you from a safe, sanitary distance as if you were a curious specimen. His examination begins not with his hands, but with his voice. He asks your family a series of questions in a clipped, precise tone. What have you been eating? What is the nature of your temperament? Were you recently overcome by a strong passion, like anger or grief? When precisely did the fever first take hold? His focus is on the whole picture, the cosmic context of your ailment. Then comes the centerpiece of his diagnostic art. He gestures towards a clay pot your family has saved for this very purpose. Inside is your urine. One of your family members carefully pours the liquid into the special glass flask the physician produces from his leather satchel. It is a vessel called a matula, shaped like a flattened teardrop, designed specifically for this purpose. This is the practice of uroscopy, the pinnacle of non-invasive diagnosis. The physician holds the matula up to the weak light filtering through a small wall opening. He swirls the liquid gently, his eyes narrowed in concentration. He's not just looking at the color, he's assessing its density, its clarity, its sediments. He compares its hue to a small folded chart he carries, a urine wheel, displaying up to 20 different colors, from a pale straw yellow to a menacing black. Each shade corresponds to a different humoral imbalance, a different afflicted organ. He may even unstopper the flask and take a delicate sniff, searching for a scent that is too sweet or too foul, another clue to your internal state. After several long moments of silent contemplation, he sets the flask aside and produces his second and equally important tool. It is not a medical instrument, but a complex chart of the heavens, an ephemeris showing the positions of the planets. He consults the chart, cross-referencing it with the date you told him your illness began. He murmurs to himself about the position of Mars in relation to Saturn, the influence of the moon in its current phase. In his world, your body is inextricably linked to the cosmos. Your liver is governed by Jupiter, your brain by the moon, your heart by the sun. To offer a treatment without knowing the celestial configuration would be pure folly, like setting sail without looking at the tide. It is the height of medical science. Historians now believe this complex system of charts and celestial alignments served a dual purpose. While based on a sincere belief in cosmic influence, it was also a powerful way for university-trained physicians to distinguish themselves from the common barber surgeon, justifying their exorbitant fees with knowledge that seemed impossibly arcane and impressive to the average person. Finally, the physician is ready to deliver his verdict. The urine, he announces, shows a distinct choleric adustion, a sign that the yellow bile has been scorched by the fever. This has been aggravated by a malign stellar influence affecting the house of Mercury, which governs the nerves. It is a diagnosis of terrifying intellectual weight. It makes the barber surgeon's simple, too much blood, seem like a child's guess. His prescribed cure is just as complex. He takes out a small piece of parchment and begins to write. This is not simply an instruction, it is a recipe. A specific combination of herbs, yes, but with crucial additions and conditions. You are to take it only at sunrise, when the celestial influences are most favorable. The herbs must be ground with a pinch of pearl dust to provide a cooling mineral essence, and mix not just with wine, but with wine from a south-facing slope, as that is believed to hold the most heat to counteract a different humoral property. He rolls up the parchment, hands it to your family, and accepts his payment, a silver coin that represents months of your family's labor. With a curt nod, he leaves. You are left in the quiet, clutching a piece of paper that feels more like a magical spell than a medical prescription. You are no closer to feeling well, and your family is significantly poorer. But you have a plan, a learned man's plan. Now you face a new daunting task. You must take this cryptic recipe and find someone who can possibly decipher and create it. You must visit the apothecary.
The physician's visit has left you not with relief, but with a new and pressing anxiety. You are weaker than ever, confined to your straw bed, while your family now possesses a small cryptic piece of parchment that represents both their greatest hope and a terrible financial burden. You are too frail to make the journey yourself, so your spouse, with a look of grim determination, takes the prescription and the last of your family's saved silver and heads to the nearby town. The only person who can make sense of the physician's arcane instructions and supply the exotic ingredients required is the apothecary. Hours later, your spouse returns, and through their weary description, you can picture the shop perfectly. It is a world away from the bloody, practical workshop of the barber surgeon. The apothecary shop is a cave of wonders, a feast for the senses. The air inside is thick and heavy, a dizzying perfume of 1,000 different things at once, the sweet spice of cinnamon, the sharp scent of camphor, and the earthy smell of dried roots, and a strange dusty undertone you can't quite place. Every wall is covered from floor to ceiling with shelves, and every shelf is crammed with jars, pots, and wooden boxes of all shapes and sizes. Dried herbs, flowers, and unidentifiable animal parts hang in bunches from the rafters. Strange pale things float in cloudy liquid inside glass jars, and colorful mineral crystals glitter in the dim light. It is a library of the earth's secrets, and the apothecary is its sole librarian. He is a man who deals in mystery, part botanist, part alchemist. When your spouse handed him the physician's note, he did not scoff at the complex language. He read it with the quiet confidence of a fellow expert, nodding as he saw the diagnosis of choleric adustion. He understood immediately that a hot and dry ailment required cooling and moistening remedies. He then turned to his vast collection and began the solemn, expensive work of compounding the cure. First, he pulled down jars of things you might recognize: dried willow bark to soothe the aches, chamomile flowers to calm the spirit. He measured them carefully on a small brass scale. But the physician's prescription went far beyond simple herbs. The apothecary moved to a locked cabinet, the source of his most potent and costly remedies. From a heavy stone jar, he carefully took a small, black, brittle chunk of what looked like dried pitch. This, he explained, was mummia, the most prized of ingredients. It is the ground-up remains of an ancient Egyptian, a mummy, transported all the way from the sun-scorched south. The logic, as he explained it, is that the bitumen and spices used by the ancients to preserve their dead for thousands of years must contain a powerful preservative and healing magic, a virtue that can be passed on to the patient. Next, for the pearl dust the physician demanded, he produced a single, imperfect pearl and crushed it into a shimmering powder with a heavy mortar and pestle. To this, he added a pinch of a brilliant red crystalline powder. He called it dragon's blood, and you know this is not from a literal dragon, but a rare blood-red resin from a tree that grows only in lands far to the east, across the sea. Each ingredient adds its own virtue, its own power to the mix. He might have also recommended the ultimate cure-all, theriac, though its cost is likely beyond even your desperate family's means. It is a legendary compound, a thick, dark treacle rumored to cure everything from a simple fever to the plague itself. The exact composition of theriac is the subject of much scholarly fascination, as recipes varied wildly, but often contained over 60 ingredients, including viper's flesh, opium, cinnamon, crushed gemstones, and a host of other exotic spices, making it one of the most complex and long-lasting medicines in history. But today, your prescription is specific. The apothecary takes the powdered mummy, the pearl dust, the dragon's blood, and the herbs, and begins to grind them all together. The rhythmic, scraping sound of the pestle in the mortar is the sound of your family's silver being transformed into a small pile of brownish-red dust. He carefully folds the precious powder into a piece of clean paper, giving your spouse stern instructions to mix it with the prescribed wine and to administer it only at the correct time, just as the physician ordered. Now, back in your hut, the moment has come. The powder is carefully tipped into a cup of wine, turning it into a cloudy, gritty, and frankly unappetizing sludge. But this is the pinnacle of medical science. This is your best and perhaps final hope. With your spouse supporting your head, you drink the bitter, earthy concoction. It tastes of dust and spice and something else, something ancient and strange. You swallow it all, praying that its legendary virtues will begin their work, that the cooling pearls and preservative mummy dust will extinguish the fire inside you. You lie back, exhausted from the effort. You wait for the magic to begin, for the fever to break, for a wave of healing coolness to wash over you. You wait, and you wait, but nothing happens. The heat behind your eyes does not recede. The ache in your bones does not fade. The expensive, exotic, and expertly prescribed remedy has had no more effect than the barber surgeon's blade or your own cup of small beer. As you drift into a fitful, feverish sleep, you are left with the terrifying realization that the combined knowledge of the physician and the apothecary has failed you completely.
You lie in a feverish haze, swimming in your own grime. The exotic powdered mummy cure from the apothecary has done nothing but leave a bitter taste in your mouth and a gaping hole in your family's finances. Days of uninterrupted sweating have left your skin a sticky, disgusting film. Your coarse wool blanket, your only comfort against the world, is now heavy and damp with your body's relentless heat. The straw mattress beneath you, a fragrant blend of hay, dried grass, and regret, has absorbed the foul odors of your sickness. A simple primal desire begins to bloom in the fog of your mind, the desire to be clean. Oh, to be submerged in a tub of cool water, to wash away the grime, the sweat, the clinging scent of sickness. To feel, just for a moment, fresh and new. It sounds like a vision of heaven. It is a beautiful, wonderful thought, and it is, you know with absolute certainty, one of the most dangerous and foolish ideas you could possibly have. As soon as the fantasy forms, your lifetime of learning and ingrained common sense rises up to crush it. In your world, the greatest threat to your health, beside an imbalance of your internal humors, is the air you breathe. Disease, you have been taught, is a thing called miasma. It is a foul vapor, a pestilential cloud that rises from rotting things, from swamps, from dung heaps, from open graves, from any source of decay and corruption. Your nose is your first line of defense. If something smells foul, it is likely actively trying to kill you. This bad air drifts invisibly through the world, seeking a way into your body to wreak havoc on your humors and bring sickness and death. And what, according to all medical wisdom, is the easiest way to let this poisonous miasma in? An open pore. Your skin, you understand, is a fortress wall, and a bath, particularly a hot one, is the most effective way to throw open every gate and window in that fortress. The heat of the water opens up your pores, leaving you utterly defenseless. The bad air, the invisible pestilence, seeps into your now vulnerable body, free to travel through your blood, curdle your bile, and bring on the very fever you are so desperately trying to cure. In fact, the layers of dirt and grime that currently cake your body are not seen as unhygienic. They are your armor. This natural accumulated filth, combined with the dirt from your clothes and the oils from your skin, forms a protective shield. This shield of grime seals your pores shut, keeping the miasma out. To be too clean is to be dangerously exposed. To wash away your protective layer, especially now, in your weakened and vulnerable state, would be a catastrophic act of self-sabotage. It is far healthier and far safer to remain dirty. Historians often point out the irony that while the church did frown upon the debauchery and sin associated with the old Roman-style public bathhouses, it was this deep-seated medical fear of miasma, a terror that gripped the world after the Black Death, that truly turned bathing from a regular social activity into a rare and medically inadvisable venture for centuries. The bathhouse didn't just represent a threat to your soul, it represented a direct threat to your life. Even if you were a reckless rebel, determined to risk it all for a moment of cleanliness, the sheer logistics of a bath are a nightmare. It's an entire day's production. First, your already exhausted family would have to haul dozens of heavy, sloshing wooden buckets of water from that treacherous stream we already know is teeming with its own dangers. Then you would have to sacrifice an enormous amount of your carefully rationed firewood, fuel you need for cooking and for warmth, to heat the water over your small hearth. You'd pour the steaming water into a large wooden tub, which is probably leaking, and place it in the middle of your crowded one-room hut. Then, with your entire family watching, you'd have to perform your ablutions with no hope of privacy. And when you were finished, what would you do with a tub full of gallons of gray, dirty water? You'd do what everyone does. You'd heave it out the door and dump it directly into the street. The entire process is a monumental undertaking, all for an act that is widely considered to be a health risk. So, you abandon the foolish thought. Cleaning, for you, means something different. It might mean taking a damp cloth and wiping your face and hands. It might mean changing your linen shirt, the garment closest to your skin, which is believed to absorb the body's impurities. For the wealthy, it might mean dousing themselves in expensive perfumes to mask the body's odors. But a full-body immersion in water? That is a luxury reserved for the foolish and the brave. You resign yourself to the sticky reality of your sickbed. You are trapped not only by your fever, but by the very logic of the world you inhabit. The grime is your shield. The sweat is a symptom. And the world outside your door, with its own pervasive filth and miasmic threats, is waiting.
You cannot bear to lie in the stale, sickly air of your hut for another moment. The four walls, which have been your entire world for days, now feel like a coffin. You need to move. You need to see the sky, to feel the air on your skin, even if your medical knowledge tells you that air is a source of great peril. Pushing aside the heavy wool blanket, you slowly, achingly rise to your feet. A short walk, you tell yourself, just to the end of the lane and back. What harm could there be in that? You pull a cloak over your shoulders and push open the door. The world rushes in, a chaotic symphony of sound and smell that makes you recoil. The air is not fresh. It is a thick, tangible soup of odors, the wood smoke from 100 hearths, the sharp tang of animal manure, the sour smell of stale beer from a nearby alehouse, and a pervasive, underlying scent of rot and decay. This is the very miasma you've been taught to fear, and you are about to walk right into it. You take your first tentative step into the street. There is no pavement, no cobblestones, just a treacherous landscape of packed earth, mud, and filth. A shallow open trench runs down the middle of the lane, what some call the kennel. It's meant to carry away rainwater, but in reality it is a sluggish, open sewer, choked with a vile slurry of household waste, horse dung, and whatever else the laws of gravity have brought to it. You have to watch every single step, your eyes scanning the ground to find a path that is merely muddy, not submerged in a foul-smelling puddle of unknown origin. The filth is not accidental, it is the byproduct of life. The butcher down the lane has just finished slaughtering a pig and has tossed a bucket of blood and entrails into the street for the stray dogs. The dyer's workshop releases streams of colored, chemical-laden water that pool in the ruts. And every household, including your own, contributes to the mess, sweeping refuse from the doorway and tossing out buckets of dirty water. Suddenly, a cry from a second-story window above you slices through the din. "Gardy-loo!" You don't have to think. Your body reacts instantly, pressing you back against the rough wall of a building. A heartbeat later, a cascade of liquid splashes onto the ground exactly where you were standing. It's the contents of a chamber pot, hurled into the street without a second thought. The cry of "Gardy-loo," a butchering of the French phrase "gardez-l'eau," or "watch out for the water," is the only courtesy you get. It is a daily, accepted hazard of urban life. The street is a public space, not just for people, but for animals of all kinds. A sow and her litter of kiglets root happily in a pile of rotting vegetable scraps. Chickens peck and scratch in the dirt, seemingly immune to the filth. A pack of lean, mangy dogs darts between the legs of passers-by, their noses to the ground. And a constant stream of horses, the primary mode of transport for anyone of means, adds its own steady contribution to the ever-growing layer of muck on the street. And yet, archaeological evidence suggests it wasn't a complete free-for-all. Town records show early, often ignored, attempts at regulation. Small fines for dumping your refuse in front of your neighbor's door instead of your own. Or ordinances demanding that a family's pigs be properly penned. The rules existed, a faint civic acknowledgement that things could be better, but enforcing them in a world without a sanitation department or public waste collection was another matter entirely. The street remained the default destination for all that was unwanted. You pull your cloak tighter, holding a corner of the fabric over your nose and mouth, a flimsy barrier against the assault. Every breath feels like a risk. The sour stench from the kennel, the pungent odor from the tannery, the sweet, cloying smell of decay. Each one is a potential carrier of disease, a cloud of miasma ready to invade your already weakened body. Your short walk, intended to be a moment of relief, has become a harrowing journey through a landscape of hazards. The very air, which should be a source of life, feels like a threat. You reach the end of the lane, your mission accomplished, and turn to head back. The brief excursion has done nothing to lift your spirits. It has only reinforced the feeling of being trapped in a world saturated with sickness. The filth outside mirrors the illness inside. You hurry back to your hut, your feet caked in mud, your lungs full of suspicious air. As you close the door behind you, shutting out the chaos of the street, you are left with a chilling thought. If this is the state of the world on a normal day, what will happen when a real sickness arrives? A sickness that isn't just in one person, but in the air everywhere, for everyone.
The harrowing walk through the town's filth has left you with a deep-seated unease, a feeling that has little to do with your own lingering fever. The world outside your door feels fragile, perched on the edge of something terrible. You were right to be afraid. A few days later, the fear arrives in person, carried in the whispers of a traveling merchant passing through your town. He speaks of a great sickness in the port city he has just fled, a pestilence that strikes with shocking speed and lethality, leaving heaps of bodies in its wake. The news spreads faster than any disease. It travels from the market square to the alehouse, from the blacksmith's forge to the weaver's loom. At first it is a rumor, a distant horror story to be told in hushed tones. But then, a family at the edge of town, one who took in a traveler, falls suddenly and violently ill. The fear is no longer a distant whisper, it is here, breathing the same foul air that you do. The reaction is immediate and driven by the one medical principle everyone understands, the principle of miasma. The plague, everyone knows, is a poisonous vapor, a corruption of the air itself. The only defense is to purify the space around you, to build a fortress of scent to ward off the invisible enemy. You begin to see your neighbors adopting strange new rituals. The woman next door now constantly holds a small vinegar-soaked sponge to her nose. Children are given little pouches of herbs, rosemary, mint, and cloves to wear around their necks. In the market, the wealthier townsfolk walk around holding pomanders, which are oranges or apples studded so thickly with cloves they resemble strange, spiked fruits. They hold them to their faces as they walk, believing the strong, pleasant spice will overpower and neutralize any stray particle of plague-ridden air. The air in the streets, already thick with smoke and refuse, is now even heavier with the scent of fires lit at every corner. People burn juniper branches, rosemary, and bundles of lavender, a desperate, fragrant attempt to cleanse the very atmosphere, to fight a poison with a perfume. Then, a new and terrifying figure appears on your streets. He is the plague doctor. He is hired by the town council, a specialist in this new terror. His appearance is alien, designed to protect him from the miasma he is paid to confront. He wears a long, waxed leather coat that covers him from neck to ankle, thick gloves, and a wide-brimmed hat. But it is his face that causes everyone to stop and stare in a mixture of awe and horror. He wears a mask with a long, bird-like beak that protrudes a half-foot from his face. This is not for mere show. The beak is packed with a potent blend of aromatic herbs and spices, ambergris, mint, camphor, and perhaps a bit of the legendary cure-all thuriac. It is a personal, portable air filter designed to ensure that every breath the doctor takes is first drawn through a purifying cloud of scent. Sociologists and historians still debate the true purpose and effectiveness of this famous costume. Was it a genuine, if flawed, attempt at a sterile barrier? A terrifying symbol meant to keep the fearful and the sick at a safe distance? Or simply a practical uniform that kept the doctor's own clothes free of the grime of his grim work? To you, he is simply a specter of the new age you now live in. As the sickness spreads, official measures, born of desperation, are put into place. The gates are guarded, and all unknown travelers are turned away. But the most terrifying measure is for those within the walls. When a household is discovered to have the sickness, it is sealed, the door is boarded shut from the outside, and a large red cross is painted on it as a stark warning to all. The entire family, the sick, the healthy, the old, the young, are condemned to face the plague together. They are quarantined. The word itself is an import from the great port cities of Italy, where ships arriving from afflicted lands were forced to wait at anchor for 40 days, a 40 giorni, before their sailors were allowed ashore. Here, in your town, the 40 days are a death sentence served within your own home. You lie on your mattress, listening. Your own fever, the one that started this whole miserable journey, feels almost like a forgotten friend, but now every symptom is amplified by terror. Is the heat under your skin the beginning of the plague's fire? Is the ache in your bones the prelude to the telltale swellings? You see a red cross on your neighbor's door down the lane, and a cold dread grips you that has nothing to do with your own humoral imbalance. The world has shrunk to the size of your hut. The streets outside are quieter now, not from cleanliness, but from a shared, silent panic. The only sound that seems to travel is the constant, mournful tolling of the church bell, which no longer marks the passing of the hours, but the passing of another soul. Your personal struggle for health is now utterly insignificant, swallowed up by a vast collective struggle for survival. The question is no longer when you will get better, but if anyone will be left when the bells finally fall silent.
In the oppressive quiet of the plague-stricken town, your own body decides to betray you in a new and exquisitely painful way. The generalized, feverish ache that has been your companion for weeks has faded, either burned out on its own or simply overshadowed by the greater collective fear. But in its place, a new misery arises. It starts as a dull throb in your jaw, a minor annoyance. Within a day, it blossoms into a sharp, insistent, and all-consuming agony, a toothache. In a world stalked by a swift and deadly pestilence, the pain of a single tooth feels both absurdly trivial and cosmically unfair.
Yet it is impossible to ignore. The pain is a hot poker driven into your jaw, a relentless drumbeat that silences all other thoughts. You can't eat. You can't sleep. The fear of the plague is a vast, abstract terror. This is a small, sharp, and intensely personal hell. Your spouse, peering into your mouth by the light of a candle, confirms your suspicion. One of your back molars, a large grinder, worn down from years of chewing coarse bread, has a dark spot on it, a hole. But to you, this is not decay in the way your descendants will understand it. The cause is obvious, a truth known to everyone, from the lowliest peasant to the most learned scholar. You have a toothworm. It is a belief as old as memory itself. A tiny malicious worm has bored its way into the fortress of your tooth and is now living inside, gnawing on the sensitive pulp, causing the hole and the excruciating pain. Every throb you feel is the creature writhing in its lair. Your diet may be low in the sugars that will plague modern teeth, but dental anthropologists suggest your problems are just as severe. The stone-ground flour in your daily bread is filled with abrasive grit that slowly wears your enamel down to the nerve, while a lifetime of chewing tough foods can cause cracks and fissures, perfect entry points for the dreaded toothworm. Before resorting to the final, brutal solution of extraction, you must first try to coax the worm out. Your family prepares a poultice of crushed herbs and presses it against your swollen gum. It does nothing. The next step is more dramatic, a folk remedy whispered as a guaranteed cure. Fumigation. A small bowl of glowing charcoal is brought to you. Your spouse places a few dried black seeds onto the coals. They are henbane seeds, known for their powerful properties. As the seeds heat up, they begin to smolder, releasing a thick, acrid smoke. A hollow reed funnel is placed in your mouth, its opening aimed directly at the offending tooth. You are instructed to lean over the bowl and inhale the smoke, drawing the worm-killing fumes into your mouth. The smoke is dense and makes you cough, but you persist. It has a strange, numbing effect on your jaw, and the world begins to feel pleasantly distant and fuzzy. After several long minutes of inhaling the narcotic fumes, you are told to spit into a bowl of clean water. You do so, and your family peers into the bowl with anticipation. And there, floating in the water, are several small, black, thread-like specks. They look exactly like tiny, dead worms. The cure has worked! The worm has been expelled! A wave of relief washes over you. What you don't know, of course, is that the worms are merely the charred, ash-like skeletons of the henbane seeds themselves, and the relief you feel is from the plant's mild anesthetic properties. Your relief is short-lived. By the next morning, the numbing effect has worn off, and the pain returns with a vengeance. The worm, it seems, was not alone, or it was merely stunned. The failed fumigation leaves only one path forward. The tooth must be extracted. This is not the job for the expensive, theoretical physician. This is a job for a man of practical skills. You could return to the barber surgeon, but for a simple extraction, there is often a specialist, the itinerant tooth puller who sets up a small stage in the market square. His work is part medicine, part performance, often accompanied by a drummer to drown out the patient's cries and attract a crowd. You find him there, a large man with hands like shovels. There is no anesthetic offered, save for a long swig of strong, cheap ale to dull your senses. You sit on a low stool, your head tilted back. An assistant holds your head steady from behind. The tooth puller selects his instrument, not a delicate tool, but a fearsome piece of iron called a dental pelican, designed to hook under the tooth and lever it out. He forces your jaw open, probes for the correct tooth, and then latches the cold iron onto it. You grip the sides of the stool, your knuckles white. There is no gentle wiggling. He plants his feet, takes a firm grip, and pulls. You feel an incredible grinding pressure, a sound deep inside your own head, like a tree root being torn from the earth. There's a sickening crack as the root fractures, and then a sudden, shocking release. The tooth is out. A hot, metallic gush of blood fills your mouth. The tooth puller holds up his prize for the small crowd to see, a bloody molar with a long, cracked root. The sharp, piercing agony is gone, replaced by a dull, throbbing ache from the brutalized socket in your jaw. You spit a mouthful of blood on the ground, your body trembling. In the shadow of a world-ending pestilence, you have just survived a routine trip to the dentist. The experience is a stark reminder that even if you manage to avoid the great, sweeping scythe of the plague, there are 1,000 smaller, more intimate agonies waiting for their turn to test your endurance.
The throbbing in your jaw has subsided into a dull, persistent ache. The raw, empty socket is a constant reminder of your body's fragility, a personal wound that you nurse in the shadow of the great public wound of the plague. You find yourself thinking about pain, about the many ways a body can be broken. The fear of the pestilence is a heavy cloak over everything, but beneath it, the old, familiar dangers of life have not gone away. People still fall, bones still break. Needing to fetch some water from the communal well, you venture out, your steps slow and deliberate. The town is quieter than it was before the sickness, the usual hustle and bustle replaced by a skittish, fearful energy. As you round a corner, you see a small crowd gathering. A wooden cart, its wheel shattered in one of the street's deep, muddy ruts, lies tilted at a precarious angle. A man, the cart's owner, is on the ground, cradling his arm and groaning, his face pale and beaded with sweat. His forearm is bent at a sickening, unnatural angle. It is clearly broken. No one calls for the university-trained physician. His complex charts and urine flasks are useless here. No one even calls for the barber surgeon, though he has some experience with such things. Instead, a boy is sent running, and the crowd murmurs a single name. They are waiting for the boon setter. A few minutes later, an old woman arrives. She is not a person of status. She wears a simple woolen dress and carries no bag of instruments. Her authority comes not from a university degree, but from her hands, and from a secret practical knowledge passed down through her family for generations. She is the village bone setter, and for this specific injury, she is the highest medical authority there is. She kneels beside the injured man, her movements calm and purposeful. She ignores his groans of pain and gently, firmly takes his injured arm in her hands. Her eyes close for a moment as her experienced fingers trace the line of the bone through his skin. She is reading the break, understanding its position, its angle. The crowd watches in respectful silence. After a moment, she gives the man a stern look. "This will be a moment of sharp pain," she says, her voice leaving no room for argument. "Be ready." Before the man can fully prepare himself, she pulls and twists with a swift, practiced motion. There is a wet, grating sound, and a single sharp cry of agony from the man, a cry that is cut short as the bone setter pushes the two ends of the bone back into their proper alignment. The unnatural angle is gone. The arm is straight again. The most crucial part of the healing process is over in a single, brutal, merciful second. Now the bone must be held in place. The bone setter calls for supplies. A family member brings strips of clean linen. Another brings a bowl containing a thick, sticky paste of flour and egg whites. The old woman takes wooden splints, carved to fit the shape of an arm, and places them on either side of the break. Then she takes the linen strips, dips them into the eggy, glutinous mixture, and begins to wrap the arm, splints and all.
She works quickly, layer over layer, creating a thick white casing. As the mixture dries in the air, it will harden into a surprisingly rigid and supportive cast, holding the bone perfectly still so that nature can perform its slow magic of knitting it together again. You watch, fascinated. This is a medicine that makes sense. It is practical, effective, and born of experience. But as you observe the proceedings, you are keenly aware of a terrifying alternative. Medical historians note a sharp distinction in prognosis here. For this man's simple, closed fracture, his chances of a full recovery are actually quite good. But had the bone splintered and pierced his skin, creating a compound or open fracture, his fate would almost be sealed. In a world without antibiotics or sterile procedures, such a wound, a direct open pathway into the body, would almost certainly lead to a deep infection. Within days, the arm would swell, the skin would turn black, and the sweet, foul stench of gangrene would set in. Faced with such a certainty, the only hope for survival, however slim, would be a swift and brutal amputation by the barber surgeon. The difference between a full recovery and a likely death was nothing more than a few inches of unbroken skin. The crowd around you shares this unspoken knowledge. You can see the relief on their faces that it is a clean break. In this time of plague, when everyone's constitution feels weakened and the very air is suspect, an open wound is the gravest of liabilities. It is a personal invitation for the pestilence to bypass the body's outer defenses and march directly into the bloodstream. The injured man, his arm now securely encased, is helped to his feet. He thanks the bone setter, who simply nods and walks away, her work done. You watch him being led home, his face still pale, but no longer contorted in agony. You have just witnessed a small miracle of practical medicine. But the chilling image of what could have been, the splintered bone, the torn flesh, the looming threat of the saw, sticks in your mind. It is another reminder of the razor's edge upon which life is lived, where survival depends not just on avoiding the great sicknesses, but on the simple, dumb luck of how a body falls and how a bone happens to break.
The dull ache in your jaw has become a part of you now, a constant low-level reminder of your body's capacity for betrayal. Having witnessed the stark practicality of the bone setter, you find yourself acutely aware of the different kinds of pain and peril that stalk your daily life. The great fear of the plague still hangs in the air, but one evening, a new and entirely different kind of drama begins to unfold in the hut next to yours. It starts with low, rhythmic groans, a sound that is not one of sickness, but of immense, natural effort. Your neighbor is in labor. This is not an event for the barber surgeon's blade or the physician's charts. This is a woman's world. You and the other men in the vicinity are expected to make yourselves scarce. The laboring woman's home becomes a sacred and sealed space, permeable only to other women. Her mother is there, her sisters, a few close neighbors. They gather to offer support, to whisper encouragement, to wipe her brow with a cool cloth. And orchestrating it all is the most important person in the room, the one person your neighbor trusts more than anyone else at this moment, the midwife. Like the bone setter, the midwife is a pillar of the community, her knowledge practical, not theoretical. She has learned her craft not from books, but from experience, having attended dozens, perhaps hundreds of births. She is the calm, steady center of the storm, her hands having guided a whole generation of your village into the world. Her presence is a comfort, a sign that things are proceeding as they should. Inside the hut, she directs the other women in rituals designed to ease the baby's passage. Her first instructions are symbolic, intended to open the way. She tells them to unbraid the laboring woman's hair, to untie every knot on every rope in the hut, and to unlock every chest and door. The belief is that as these things are opened in the physical world, so too will the mother's body open to release the child.
For extra help, a special birthing girdle, a long strip of parchment inscribed with prayers to Saint Margaret, the patron saint of childbirth, might be tied around your neighbor's swollen abdomen, a holy appeal for a safe delivery. From your own hut, you can only hear the muffled sounds of the ordeal, the low murmur of the women's voices, the sharp, pained cries of your neighbor, the midwife's firm, encouraging commands. You know, as everyone does, the immense dangers of this moment. A baby can be facing the wrong way, a breech birth that can be fatal for both mother and child. A prolonged labor can lead to utter exhaustion, leaving the mother with no strength for the final crucial push. And even after a successful birth, the danger is far from over. A sudden, unstoppable hemorrhage can drain the life from a new mother in minutes. The role of men in this process is to stay away, to pray, and to wait. A male physician would only be summoned in a moment of absolute catastrophe, a sign that all hope is lost. He would be called not to deliver a living baby, but to save the mother from a baby that is already gone, stuck in the birth canal. His grim task would be to perform a brutal operation to extract the infant in pieces, a last desperate attempt to save the mother's life, or at least to allow her to receive last rites before she succumbs. The arrival of a man at a birth means tragedy has already struck. You don't know the precise numbers, but you see the reality all around you. You have lost siblings in infancy. You know women your own age who died in the bed of childbirth. Historians and demographers continue to analyze parish records to understand the brutal statistics, but estimates suggest that as many as 1 in 3 children might not survive to see their first birthday, and childbirth itself remains one of the single greatest killers of women of childbearing age. Every birth is a gamble, a life or death roll of the dice. The sounds from next door intensify. The cries become more desperate, more primal. There is a long period of struggle that seems to stretch on for an eternity. The entire neighborhood holds its breath, and then a new sound slices through the evening air, sharp and thin and wonderfully alive, the wailing cry of a newborn child. A collective sigh of relief seems to pass through the village. But the women's work is not over. The midwife must now deliver the afterbirth and carefully watch the new mother for any signs of hemorrhage. She will use her knowledge of herbs to prepare potions to help the womb contract and to try and ward off the almost inevitable infection. In this unhygienic world, childbed fever, a postpartum infection, is a silent killer that can steal a mother away days after she has survived the trial of delivery. A little while later, the midwife emerges from the hut, her face weary but her expression satisfied. She announces to your neighbor's anxious husband that he has a healthy son and that his wife, although exhausted, is resting. In a time so defined by sickness and death, this moment of new life feels like a miracle, a small, defiant victory. But everyone knows the tightrope they have just walked, the 100 things that could have gone wrong. The fragility of the body has been laid bare once again, not in sickness or injury, but in the very act of its own creation.
The small, defiant joy brought by your neighbor's newborn is a brief candle against a vast darkness. In the days that follow, as the reality of your world reasserts itself, the quiet streets, the distant tolling of the bell, the ever-present fear of the plague, a new kind of ailment begins to settle upon you. It is not a fever. It is not an ache. It is a slow, heavy, creeping sadness that drains the color from the world and the will from your limbs. The physical ordeal you have endured has left you weakened, and now your spirit begins to falter. You find you have no appetite. You have no desire to speak. Your greatest wish is to be left alone, to lie on your straw mattress and stare at the crumbling daub of the wall, your thoughts circling in dark, repetitive patterns. The world outside your hut feels like a distant, meaningless performance. This is melancholy. In your understanding, this is not a failing of character or a weakness of the will. It is a physical ailment,
as real as the fever you suffered or the toothache that tormented you. It is a classic case of a humoral imbalance. Your body, your very soul, is waterlogged with an excess of black bile. This humor, you know, is cold and dry like the winter earth. It is associated with the spleen, and when it is produced in overabundance, it slows your blood, clouds your thoughts, and casts a pall of sorrow over everything. It is the humor of scholars, of hermits, of deep thinkers, but in excess, it is a poison to the spirit. This is a strange and contradictory affliction. Historians of emotion debate the complex status of this condition. While it was certainly seen as a medical ailment in need of a cure, melancholy was also sometimes romanticized as the mark of a superior mind. The cheerful, sanguine man might be good company, but the melancholic man was thought to be more capable of profound thought, of artistic genius, and of a deeper connection to God. To be melancholic was to be sick, yes, but in a way that was almost poetic. This philosophical view offers you little comfort. You simply feel heavy, empty, and unbearably sad. The cure for your condition, as prescribed by centuries of medical wisdom, is not one of potion or powder. It is a cure of lifestyle, a gentle campaign to counteract the cold, dry nature of the black bile with things that are warm, moist, and stimulating to the senses. If you could afford the physician again, he would give you a strict regimen. First, your diet must change. You are forbidden from eating melancholic foods, dark meats, old cheese, dark wine, and all root vegetables that grow in the cold, dark earth. Instead, you must consume things that are light, warm, and moistening. You are coaxed by your family to eat a small piece of boiled chicken, or a fresh fish if one can be had. You are given watered-down white wine, lettuce, and grapes. The idea is to flood your system with light, airy foods to balance the heavy, earthy bile. Next, your environment must be managed. Solitude is your enemy, for it allows the dark thoughts to fester. You are gently forced to sit outside your hut in the sun, its warmth a direct antidote to the coldness inside you. You are told to look at beautiful things, fresh flowers, if any are still growing, or the slow, meandering path of the stream. Looking at green and growing things is believed to cheer the soul. Music is also prescribed, but it must be of a very specific kind. The boisterous, martial sound of a drum or a horn would be too jarring for your fragile spirit. Instead, the sweet, melodic sound of a lute or a harp is recommended. Its gentle vibrations thought to literally retune your soul and soothe the melancholic vapors. Your family, desperate to help, does its best. Your spouse sits with you, telling you stories of better times. A neighbor's son is asked to play a simple, cheerful tune on his wooden flute from a safe distance. It is all meant to reawaken your senses, to pull you out of the cold, dry fog of your inner world. The parish priest might also visit, viewing your condition through a spiritual lens. He might call it acedia, a kind of spiritual sloth or weariness, a dangerous state of indifference to God's world. His prescription would be different: prayer, forced attendance at Mass, and contemplation of holy relics to reignite your spiritual passions. You sit in the sunlight, listening to the flute, a piece of boiled chicken uneaten in a bowl on your lap. You understand the logic of the cure, but it feels like trying to warm a frozen river with a single candle. The sadness you feel is not just an excess of black bile. It is a logical response to your life. Your body is weak. Your town is stalked by a terrifying plague. Your future is a blank wall of uncertainty. The melancholy is not a malfunction of your spleen. It is a mirror reflecting the state of your world. The gentle cures do not work. The sadness remains. a heavy cloak you cannot shrug off. It is a sickness of the soul that cannot be bled out by a barber surgeon or purged by an apothecary's concoction. It is a wound that is beyond the reach of their medicine, a quiet internal agony that you must simply endure.
The melancholy clings to you like a damp shroud, muffling the world in a fog of gray indifference. The gentle cures, the walks, the music, the prescribed diet, have done little to lift the heavy weight of black bile from your soul. You find yourself wandering through the town, not as a participant, but as a ghost, observing the frantic, fragile lives around you with a profound sense of detachment. Your wanderings eventually lead you to the market square, where a crowd has gathered, their faces a mixture of morbid curiosity and dread. In the center of the square, on a raised wooden platform, a grim drama is about to unfold. It is a makeshift operating theater open to the public gaze. The barber surgeon, the same man who bled you weeks ago, is there, but today he is not a simple phlebotomist. Today he is a surgeon in the truest, most brutal sense of the word. His patient is a young farmhand, brought in from the fields after his leg was crushed by a runaway cart. You can see the injury from a distance. The limb is mangled, swollen, and a dark purplish-black color is creeping up from the foot. The sweet, foul stench of gangrene, the smell of dying flesh hangs in the air. There is no hope of saving the leg. The only hope of saving the boy is to cut it off. The surgeon works with a focused, grim efficiency. He lays out his instruments on a piece of linen, several sharp, curved knives, a small fine-tooth saw, and a larger, more formidable one for the bone, and a set of terrifying iron hooks for pulling back flesh. In this era before anesthesia, a surgeon's greatest virtue is not precision, but speed. The entire procedure must be a blur of controlled violence, over in a matter of minutes before the patient dies from the sheer agony and shock. The young farmhand is given a leather strap to bite down on, to keep from biting off his own tongue. He is also handed a jug of raw, potent spirit, and is forced to drink as much as he can, as quickly as he can. It is the only medicine for the pain he is about to endure. Two burly assistants, their faces set like stone, grip the boy's arms and his good leg, pinning him to the platform. He is terrified, but he knows this is his only chance. From your detached, melancholic state, you watch the scene unfold like a gruesome play. Surviving accounts from patients of these procedures are rare, but historians piece together the experience from surgeons' notes and journals. These clinical records often focus on the technical challenges, the difficulty of sawing through a bone, the unexpected bleeding, rather than the patient's unimaginable agony, highlighting a necessary professional detachment from the horror of their own work. The surgeon does not hesitate. He takes a long knife and makes a swift, deep circular cut through the flesh of the boy's thigh, well above the line of the gangrene. The boy's muffled scream is lost in the noise of the crowd. The surgeon works with breathtaking speed, slicing through muscle and tendon down to the bone. Then he takes up the saw. The sound is unforgettable. A wet, grating rasp as steel bites into living bone. The assistants strain to hold the boy still as his body convulses. Saw, saw, saw. It is over in less than a minute. The lower leg, a dead, useless thing, is tossed aside into a bucket. But the ordeal is not over. It is about to get worse. The greatest immediate danger now is bleeding to death. An assistant steps forward, pulling a long iron rod from a nearby brazier of glowing coals. The tip of the rod is a flat, circular disc, and it glows a menacing, shimmering red. It is the cauterizing iron. The surgeon takes the iron. The assistants reposition their grip, bracing for the worst. He presses the glowing hot metal firmly against the open, bleeding stump of the boy's leg. A thick, acrid smoke billows up, carrying the sickening stench of burning flesh. The patient, who had nearly passed out from the first wave of pain, shrieks, a sound of pure, inhuman agony that cuts through the market square. The sizzle of his own flesh being seared shut is the last sound he will remember from the procedure. It is an act of unimaginable cruelty,
and it is the only thing that can save his life by sealing the arteries and stopping the flow of blood. The stump, now a blackened and cauterized wound, is hastily wrapped in bandages soaked in egg yolk and turpentine, a common dressing believed to aid healing. The patient, mercifully, has fainted. He has survived the surgery. Whether he will survive the inevitable infection that will follow in the coming days is another matter entirely. You turn away, the horrifying spectacle finally piercing the gray fog of your melancholy. The raw, visceral reality of the surgeon's work, the knife, the saw, the iron, makes the gentle philosophical cures for your own sad soul seem absurd and childish. You have just witnessed medicine at its most violent, at its most desperate, and perhaps, in this brutal world, its most honest. It poses a question that sticks with you as you walk away, the patient's scream still echoing in your ears. Is healing a gentle rebalancing of invisible forces? Or is it simply the violent, painful, and bloody act of cutting away the part of you that is already dead?
The years pass, as they always do, whether in fear or in peace. The Great Plague, after burning through your town like a forest fire, eventually receded, leaving behind a landscape of empty huts and haunted survivors. The seasons have turned over and over again, and you have turned with them. You are 48 years old. Your hair is shot through with gray, and your face is a map of your life, etched with lines of worry and work. You sit on a stool outside your hut in the fading light of a late afternoon, a privileged position you never thought you would reach. You are an elder. You are a survivor. Your body is a living chronicle of your journey. You run your tongue over the empty space in your jaw where the tooth puller did his brutal work, a small personal ruin you carry always. On your arm, a faint white scar marks the spot where the barber surgeon's lancet bled you in a futile attempt to cure a long-forgotten fever. Your joints ache with a deep, persistent pain, especially in the damp cold of morning. You call it rheumatism. It is the price of so many years of labor. Your eyesight is not what it was. The world beyond a few feet is a soft, indistinct blur. In your time, this is what it means to grow old. Historians of aging and demography often challenge the simple notion that everyone in your era died at 30. They note that if you could survive the gauntlet of childhood diseases, the trials of childbirth, and the constant grinding threat of infection, living into your 50s or even 60s was not impossible. But it was a different kind of living than your descendants will ever know. A life measured not just in years, but in aches and pains and failing senses. To be old is to be a veteran of a long and brutal war against existence itself. You look back on the medical trials you have endured and witnessed, and you see not a history of cures, but a history of gambles. You remember the learned physician with his astrological charts and his confident, useless diagnosis. You remember the apothecary's expensive powder, the pinch of powdered mummy and dragon's blood that offered nothing but a bitter taste. The grand theory of the four humors, once the unshakable foundation of your understanding, now seems like a child's story, a simple way to explain a world of terrifying complexity. You have learned that the body's secrets are deeper than any scholar's chart. As you have grown older, your thoughts turn more often not to sickness, but to its inevitable conclusion. Your fear is no longer of the pain of living, but of the nature of your dying. You pray you are granted a good death. A sudden end, while you sleep or while you work, is a terrifying prospect, not because of the lack of pain, but because of the lack of preparation. A good death is a slow one. It is a death that gives you time to call for the priest, to confess your sins and have them absolved, to make peace with your family, to say your farewells. It is a final, carefully managed ritual, the last and most important social act of your life, ensuring your soul is prepared for the journey ahead. A sudden death
cheats you of this final, crucial piece of grace. You look at your gnarled, scarred hands. They are a testament to a life of endurance. You have survived fevers and famines, plagues and personal agonies. Each scar is a story, each ache a memory. You have learned the great, simple, and brutal lesson of your time, that health is not a permanent state, but a temporary truce. And that wisdom, you realize, is a kind of cure in itself. It doesn't fix the body, but it soothes the soul, softening the edges of the fear, replacing the dark weight of melancholy with a quiet, weary acceptance. The sun dips below the horizon, painting the sky in soft shades of orange and purple. The air grows cool. It is time to go inside, to rest your aching bones by the small fire. You have survived another day. And in this world, that is the only victory that truly matters.
The day is done. The journey is over. The fire in the small hut dims to a soft orange glow, and the sounds of that other time begin to fade away, replaced by the quiet, familiar hum of your own world, your own room. The aches and pains of that distant life are not yours to carry. The fears of plague and poison are just echoes now, stories whispered from a time long past, dissolving into the stillness of the night. You are safe. You are comfortable. You are here, now, in your own bed, a place of unimaginable softness and peace. Let the weight of that other world drift away. Let it become light, like smoke rising from a chimney, disappearing into a dark and starry sky. There is nothing left for you to do, nothing left to see, nothing left to fear. There is only the gentle rhythm of your own breathing, a soft and steady tide, pulling you further and further away, deeper and deeper into a calm and quiet sleep. Let your mind become still and silent as the sleeping village at the end of a long, hard day. Rest now. Let go.